Good evening.
Good evening.
I always like to start one of these deals with a little self-help. So, have you ever had one of those days that's just horrible? Like, I have days where the only time I open my mouth is to change feet. You know what I'm saying? One of those days where just nothing's going right. I found something that gets me right out of it. All I have to do is think, you know what? Somewhere out there, there is a Mr. Pelosi. You know what I'm saying? And I use that on the suicide hotline. Ain't lost one yet. That works every time. I'm really glad to be here tonight. I wanted to make you laugh because from here on out, it's downhill. That's all I can tell you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone that had anything to do with getting me here. I love doing these gigs. And I never get to do one at home. I live 1.5 miles from here. Y'all, where have you been? I know where I've been. Oh, mercy. Well, real quick, I'll give you a real condensed version because what I'm going to do tonight is what normally takes me about 2.5 hours to do. I go all around the country talking with law enforcement at every level. I've been with every 3-lettered agency, every acronym you can come with. Over the last 10 years, I have embedded with 5 of the 7 major cartels. And when I mean I'm embedded, I've run with these guys day and night. I've used a lot of them in a lot of the documentaries that I've made. I've used, in fact, I do a lot of work with CNN and Fox, and like when Geraldo or Anderson Cooper wants an interview with a cartel member, I'm the useful idiot that they use to go get them one. And that's really what I've become, as a useful idiot in this regard. I started this 10 years ago purely by accident. I'm not going to go through all the details. My most frequently asked question is, why would these guys, these cartel guys, allow you in? And I'm going to give it to you in a very short true story. I used to produce this little show called Gangland on the History Channel. And I was producing an episode of Gangland. I was over in Juarez trying to wire up with this mid-level cartel guy. And so I'm sitting here talking to this yo-yo, and we're going through, he's like, yeah, I saw your movie. That was really good. I've seen some of your other stuff. That's good. What do you want with us? I said, well, I'm doing an episode of Gangland. And he looks at me and goes, Gangland? That's my favorite show, man. I get my wife to record that. He said, we was wondering when you were going to do an episode about us. What do you need? And I said, I need access to some of your guys. He's like, you got it. And I'm thinking, I got to get a new job, man. This isn't working. These guys run a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And what I want to start with tonight is I want you to get out of the mindset that these are a bunch of coked out cowboys shooting their little pistoleros in the air, having fun. These organizations that are here today are very forward-thinking, military-styled, tactically and strategically ran operations. This is not your daddy's cartels. You can forget everything you ever knew about street gangs, prison gangs, and the cartels because, honey, it's over. Those organizations do not exist any longer. What I'm going to show you tonight is a presentation of how the drug cartels have set up shop here in the United States. They're not shipping Mexican nationals over here to run their organizations. They are recruiting Americans to run their organizations. And their richest, most target-rich environment is junior high schools and high schools. They are on a mass recruiting campaign getting our kids to work for them. And it's working very well. And you're going to see in this film I put together exactly how easily these kids get involved, and they don't have the first damn clue what they're getting into. And you're going to see the consequences. Everything you see in this film tonight, I want you to remember one thing as you're watching it. I I took every single event that takes place in this film right out of the headlines of the United States. This didn't happen on the border or in Mexico. It happened right here. And I even used some of the newsreels at the end of this program and in the PowerPoint that follows to prove that point to you. Now, I skipped over a whole lot to get here. And let me tell you this. I go to some of the most liberal places and audiences in our country. I taught at Colorado University. I have been to UCLA. I have done I can't even count how many law enforcement seminars and conferences I've done. I was just in Vail, Colorado Friday doing one for the State of Colorado Narcotics Association, the cops that work narcotics. And I teach them essentially what I'm going to teach you tonight. What I'm going to expose to you is what I'm exposing to them. And let me tell you, they're just as shocked about it as you are. And it's something like this. All of a sudden, I can see all the light bulbs coming on these guys as I'm talking about this. All of a sudden, they're going, damn, that's why we've been seeing this and that, and this has been going on. All the pieces start to come together. Because you've got a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 500 company. There's two ways that you improve the bottom line of a Fortune 500 company. One, you increase the income. Two, decrease the expenses. Well, let me show you. You decrease the expenses by not having to pay people that you normally would have to pay to get the job done. And let me give you an example. You've known about this escalation in violence in Mexico. Well, there is a simple equation. It's called plata o plomo in Spanish, which is silver or lead, which simply means take our money or take our bullets. It used to be, if there was a federal police commander in Nuevo Laredo that the Gulf Cartel needed to work for them. And the event I'm going to tell you is a true story. This guy was offered 50 grand a month to work for the Gulf Cartel. He turned it down. He's a Mexican federal agent. He turned it down. They couldn't get this guy to pull for nothing. So he comes home one night, and there's his oldest daughter tied to a tree, and they skinned this girl alive till she bled to death. And they said, you got 4 more daughters. You going to work for us or not? Of course he's going to work for them. And guess what? They just saved 50 grand a month. This is being repeated over and over and over. And they've brought it here. This same tactic is right here. The other way you get the bottom line up is you increase the income. The Mexican drug cartels historically, prior to 2003, were the wholesalers of narcotics, illicit narcotics in our country. That market was worth about $40 billion a year. That same $40 billion translates to $250 billion retail on the streets here in the U.S. They want that market. That's why they've come over here. That's why they're merging and acquiring gangs, and that's why they're hiring our kids. It's because they want that retail market. They want as much of that $250 billion as they can get, and they're 80% there. 80% there, and that's a number Rusty invented. That came from the Department of Justice. You can look up the National Drug Threat Assessment Report for 2013, and you can verify all the information I'm going to give you. Now, the cartels, according to the DOJ, now have a presence in over 2,700 cities in the United States. That number is about half of the reality. That ought to be an alarming little buzzer going off in our head. Because these are narco-terrorist organizations. They have modeled themselves after Al-Qaeda, after Hamas, ISIS, you name it. Because they do use the same exact tactics. They work over there, they're going to work over here. And those are the tactics that these guys use. You're not going to see, in 5 years from now, you're not going to see a gangbanger that's got a tattoo on him. He's not going to be shooting the colors, flying the colors, shooting the signs, all that stuff, because the cartels do not want their operatives to be profiled. They want their guys to go unnoticed. Just like the terrorists in the Middle East. You can't pick out the turban that's going to kill you. Believe me. They don't want you to know. They don't want law enforcement, more importantly, to know who their operatives are. They want clean-cut, affluent kids. They want smart kids. Why? Well, let me tell you something. The cartels not only bring violence with them, they bring technology and sophistication with them. You know, we don't find many gangbangers that have encrypted laptops, but we find a lot of cartel guys that do. They don't go down to Office Depot and pick up a set of QuickBooks and start keeping track of their dope business on a PC. They have to have their software programs handwritten for them. Then they need those programs encrypted. They use the internet to communicate, just like the terrorists in the Middle East. So they need those programs encrypted. They need to hack into governmental databases. Why? Well, I've lived on the border now for about 5 years. Not only have I worked down there for the past 10, but I have resided 20 miles from the fence for the last 5 years. I work with the Hudson County Sheriff's Department. The sheriff in that town is one of my bestest buddies, and we made a deal. He'd give me an office in the Sheriff's Department if I would be his public information officer. That takes me 5 minutes a month to do. It really does. We're a podunk county. It's the largest county in Texas, but we ain't got nobody there. There's only 5,000 people. Unless you count the illegals. I had to throw that in there. Look, you know, it's this simple, and this is what I'm going to get to. Y'all, we both know that you can't reform our immigration problem without securing that damn border first. You can't do it. And let me tell you something. Here's the bad news about that. I am on a first name basis with every Texas sheriff on that border. And most of them all the way to San Diego. I work with these guys on a weekly basis. I go to their conferences. I teach at their conferences. Here's the thing. You can ask any sheriff along that border, Sheriff, if you had the resources, how long would it take you to seal your portion of the border off? The longest one will be 48 hours. Most of them will tell you in 24 hours. So that tells you one thing. It's not about ability, it's about political will. Ain't nobody had the political nuts to do this yet. Okay? And I'm talking about George Bush as well. He wasn't any better at it than this guy. Okay? So, the bad news is, once you seal the border, you're probably going to get about 80% of your illegal immigrants off the street, or from crossing the river. But you're only going to put a dent in the drugs, because the drugs coming in this country aren't coming in the gaps of the desert. They're coming in the legitimate ports of entry. They're coming in truckloads of computers and car parts and all this business that we do with Mexico. They're coming there. And a little statistic for you, there's 8,000 trucks and trailers crossing every day from Mexico into the United States in one port of entry. That's Nuevo Laredo, Mexico, Laredo, Texas. 8,000 a day. Want to care to take a stab at how many of those trucks and trailers we currently inspect? 50. Not 50%. 50 of them. Vegas ain't got those kind of odds. 8,000 trailers, and they're going to look at 50 of them. Y'all, when we secure the gaps in the desert, that's great. But the next stage, and this is what we got to get everybody warmed up to, is we're going to have to figure out how to reconfigure these ports of entry to better inspect the commerce that's coming across that border. Because that's where the majority of the dope is coming. And once we seal the gaps in the desert, that's where the illegals are going to come. I promise you. These guys are very smart, intelligent men that run these organizations. They're not stupid. They had that fence clock before the first bucket of cement showed up out there. They already knew how they were going to work that. And oh, by the way, we put the damn thing in the wrong place. Okay? I have people in my county that live between the fence and the border. Their house is on the other side of that fence. Border Patrol won't even go down there anymore. In our sector, Border Patrol has been pulled back to I-10. That's anywhere from 5 miles to 30 miles from the border. My residents down there call it almost America. How would you like to live in almost America? You think we got it bad? Let me tell you, I deal with that every day. So, just think these things along as you watch this, because what this film addresses is not only the drug issue, but it also addresses the cartel issue. And after that, I'll do a quick little PowerPoint and we'll talk. So, go ahead and cue that bad boy up.